Jesse Marsch, Leeds United manager, the American coach, is struggling. I mean, the main question is, does he deserve more time in charge at Leeds? He's under pressure, lads. I mean, no win in the last 8, 4 straight defeats in the Premier League. Boos are ringing down from the fans at Elland Road. He's admitted that a lot of the Leeds fans, I understand, I'm not dumb, in his own words. I know that some of the Leeds fans will want me out. And this is a really difficult situation, Nick Mendola. I'm going to come to you first, because they're playing okay. I mean, all the advanced stats you look at, they're outplaying teams, out-creating chances. It's just not happening. We know that football sometimes, the wonderful sport that it is, you don't get your just rewards for playing well, do you? And that seems to be what's happening at Leeds right now. But what are your thoughts on the situation at Leeds? Because I'm looking at the 3 games before the World Cup break, at Liverpool, at Spurs, and then at home against Bournemouth. I mean, 2 of those 3 games are very, very difficult. So it's not out of the realms of possibility that when the World Cup break comes around, Leeds are still going to be in the relegation zone where they are right now. So what's your thoughts on Jesse Marsch at Leeds?
He absolutely deserves more time. A lot of managers don't get it, though. And a lot of managers don't get it. They are 11th in expected goals, 11th in expected assists, and 11th in expected points. And that is not even accounting for the fact that they've played one less game than a bunch of teams. They are playing fine. They have a center forward who is not finishing. And I'm not putting it all on him, because Rodrigo has been finishing. But Patrick Bamford is struggling to find a form that I think we all know maybe he wasn't the sort of striker that looks like he might score 20 goals in a season, but I think we're all comfortable with him as maybe an 8, 9, 10 goal striker. But this is a tough stretch for them. And I think he's going to get to the World Cup because of that schedule you mentioned, right? It's going to be Liverpool, Bournemouth, and Spurs. And then there's a League Cup tie with Wolves. So if he can, honestly, if I told you right now that he doesn't give up 7 to Liverpool, that he gets a win over Bournemouth, and that they advance past Wolves, I think they're on track for where they need to be. The question is, it seems like their fans have, and maybe rightly so, because of the background of that club and how big Leeds was back in the day, their expectation is that it should have happened faster for them based on the footing of the club. I don't believe that. No, I don't agree with that.
That's a dangerous thing.
I know but that's what I feel like you hear from Leeds. And I don't know, Joe, if that's me from an outsider's perspective, but no. Leeds expects that once they got back to the Premier League, it was only a matter of time before they were a big 6 or big 7 club.
Yeah, and a lot's changed since the last time they've been in the Premier League. We've seen that with Aston Villa recently as well, the amount of money they've had to spend, the amount of money that Leeds have spent generally. I know that they sold Calvin Phillips and Rafinha for a huge profit, massive profit on both those players, and then reinvested a lot of that cash in new players. But yeah, I mean, with Leeds and that ambition, that's a great point, Nick, because I think it does do a disservice to the work that's getting done at the club by the current group of players and the management. And it's unrealistic at times. And that weight of history, when you walk around Elland Road, you see all the great pictures of the title winning teams from, 40, 50 years ago now, and they're held to that same standard. And it is a huge club, well supported. We're in the Champions League as recently as, the early 2000s and going far in that competition. But a lot has changed with the ownership of all of the giants in England now. It's very hard to break into that top 6 if you can even get close. It has to be perfect. Every decision you have to make has to go perfectly from a recruitment perspective, managerial, for years and years just to get yourself to that point. And I think Leeds' fans are just so anxious to get back to being a big club. Not saying they won't be back there amongst the top 6, but it's going to take a long, long time. And it's a different dynamic in the Premier League. But I want to say one thing. We're not advocating Jesse Marsch here because we love him as a coach. We've seen him in MLS with the US national team. But this is not because he's American. I know what some of the comments are going to say already. This is because he's a good coach and he's proved it at Salzburg with the New York Red Bulls. And we've seen him develop young players. And I think even if they're upset with the results, most Leeds fans, right, Andy, will actually be okay with the way that their teams played for the vast majority of this season. The end of last season was a bit different because it was just keep him up in the Premier League. He did that. That was fine. But I feel like the American narrative, we should just cut that in the bud, nip that in the bud right there, because That's not why we're talking about Jesse Marsch here, because he's at a huge club. He's a good coach and he deserves more time. That's what we're all agreeing on, right?
Yeah. One of the points that you highlighted there, developing young players, is you don't get a chance to do that at the Leeds or Premier League level. You get a Premier League job, you are bringing in players through the transfer window for tens of millions of dollars, the way that Leeds did this summer with Sinistera and Aronson and Adams and on and on and on. So you don't get the luxury of, well, these young players need to figure it out. You have to perform, you have to produce results from day one. He did just enough of that last season and found a way to get them over the line, showed I think a ton of great tactical flexibility, because that team that we saw play last year for Leeds was not a Jesse Marsch team. That was not a system that looked anything like Jesse Marsch wants them to play. But he did what he needed to do to keep them in the Premier League this season. With a preseason, in the summer, they have come out and they have played a lot more looking like a Jesse Marsch team. If you followed him at all in MLS when he was at New York Red Bulls, if you saw any of his teams at Salzburg, and if you saw what they tried to do at Leipzig as well, this is the way that Marsch wants them to play. It's very high energy. It's quite entertaining. They create a ton of chances. They just can't put them away. And to piggyback on some of the stats that Nick gave there on some of the expected numbers, their expected goal differential is even better than anything Nick listed. They are 9th in expected goal difference at almost dead zero, level with Chelsea and Manchester United, who are 5th and 6th in the Premier League right now and have simply put chances away at a better rate than Leeds have managed to do. Not to oversimplify it and make it too easy, but the fact that those teams have almost exactly the same numbers, it says that this Leeds team is going in a very good direction. If the results just turn, I think the mood would as well.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, Nick mentioned it there. They've played a game less, and it's so tight in the bottom and middle table. I mean, they win a couple of games and they're up to 9th, and it's just so. It seems crazy to be talking about this right now because they've given Jesse Marsch a lot of new players. Obviously, believe in him. The fans seem to really like him at Leeds for the most part as well. And yeah, I just have a hard time, Nick, I guess, with this question. I don't know if you can help me out. Have they improved since he arrived? I mean, Marcelo Bielsa did an incredible job to keep them in the Premier League, but we saw how bad they were struggling last season, and have no doubt in my mind they would have gone down if he would have stayed in charge. So have they improved, Leeds, or are they better to watch? Or Andy touched on it there. They're a totally different team, and they're only just at the start of their progression under Jesse Marsch. So
yeah, that's
surely
the point.
They need more time.
That's the point, because it's not impossible. It's improbable to compare them. Rafinha was such a special player. Phillips was so important to what they do. But I look at their best players right now. First of all, I want to say a name I don't think we've mentioned, and we haven't had a reason to, because it's not going to come up in our weekly discussion. Christensen is a really, really good football player. Footballer. But I look at their best players this year. Adams has been one of their best players. Jack Harrison he's been around. Rodrigo's been around. I might say the name wrong, Joe. You may need to correct me. Mark Roca is that I really like him as well. A lot of these young players, and Stroik's been good as well. And that's without mentioning some players that I think we can all agree are good pieces for them. Aronson is a fun piece who's still adjusting to the league. Melier is young for a goalkeeper. He's very young for a goalkeeper. So I think the pieces are there. And I would have been arguing the same case. He also has a real issue, Jesse Marsch, and he's taking over for a club legend. The next manager at Liverpool or Man City is going to go through something similar. Marcelo Bielsa brought a legendary club, quote unquote, back from the depths, and he lent them a lot of status just by signing on to the job. So do I believe that? I believe that almost any coach was going to be in this situation. I think he deserves at least the leeway that Bruno Lage got in taking over for Nuno. Yeah. I think that's fair, and that's why I think he's got at least a couple of weeks here, but he deserves maybe even more than that.
I think so, but it seems inevitable, right, Andy, that they're going to get to the World Cup break and assess things, and then they're going to see which coaches are available. It's going to be a really dangerous time to be a Premier League manager, I think, around the World Cup if you are in and around the bottom three and you have perceived to underachieve, which again, I don't think that Leeds really have under Jesse Marsch. I think I had them right on the cusp of going down at the start of the season. So it was always going to be a tough campaign, losing those big players, bringing in a new style of play, bringing in a lot of new players. Would it be harsh if he was sacked by Leeds in the next few weeks before the World Cup? Because it seems like the players are behind him, the directors are making all the right noises, saying we back his plan. But in reality, if the fans continue to boo and they continue to lose games, we all know how that goes. I mean, look at Steven Gerrard, look at multiple other Premier League teams this season.
I'll say this, and this is more of a judgment on Leeds. If you are hiring your third manager in 9 or 10 months, it's probably not all on the manager. That is the issues of the results. You need stability. You need continuity. This is the most insane season that we will ever have. And we've said that the last 2 or 3 years because of the things that have transpired during those seasons and messed the schedules up. You throw that extra layer of difficulty onto the challenge. And, it would be a very difficult situation, I think, for most managers to go in there and get the results right now with this team. I think a lot of managers would not even be producing the performances that Jesse Marsch is. And I think that's the thing to me that still gives me hope that they're a couple goals away, going in away from this looks completely different. And we're not even having this conversation.
Yeah. And I think the end point to this conversation is we are all heavily invested in American soccer. We've seen Jesse Marsch do so well. And it would be huge if he can turn this around and Leeds can be a top 10 team, can go on cup runs, can maybe even qualify for Europe if he's given the opportunity for the next few seasons. For American soccer, for the next level of coaches coming through the ranks and to get opportunities in the Premier League and other big leagues in Europe. So this is part of it as well. I think from our perspective and our focus, we want to see him do well, obviously, from a US perspective. But this isn't just handed out on a platter because, we'll give the US guy a chance. He's earned this and he deserves to be where he is right now. And I think we're just all a bit frustrated that, like he is, he said in his press conference, I'm angry that we're not getting our just rewards, that we're not putting the ball in the back of the net, that we're making some silly mistakes that aren't getting us the points we deserve. And they're that close, Leeds, to being a very, very good Premier League team. But points and results, that's the name of the game, right? So I feel like it's going to be really, really close for Jesse Marsch to stay in charge at Leeds, especially with those big away games at Liverpool and Tottenham to come up between now and the World Cup. If a couple of huge defeats there, and it's a difficult situation, right? Nick, do you want the final word on this, Nick? What are your final hopes for Jesse Marsch?
Yeah, sure. I'll take the final word happily. I can't be prepared for anything anymore. We can't be prepared for anything anymore. But I do worry what it would say about the status of I don't want to say the status of American coaches, but we saw Bob Bradley's quick and dismissal at Swansea. I don't know that if Marsch isn't going to be given this lead, because I do think there is an American angle to it, a foreign angle to how he's being judged. If he was having the same performances and having the same numbers and he was Graham Potter or Steve Cooper, I guess look at Nottingham Forest, who had a similar turnaround in terms of their star players and adjusting to the next level. I know we want that better, but Nottingham Forest also has a European Cup in its background, right? So I just think it would be unfortunate if he's let go. And I wonder what the next step would be for him, but that's for another show.
That's true. But Leeds never had the European Cup. That was the big thing that they missed, but they got.
Well, I'm sorry. They were in the discussion. You know what I mean? Sorry, Leeds fans. They're going to be so mad.
They would have loved to. They would have loved to have that for sure. But Jesse Marsch right now is just focused on getting Leeds for the next few weeks, getting the job done, getting them over the line. And then hopefully when they get to the World Cup break, he has a month and a half to work on things with the team, fine tune it. And just, I think, guys, we all agree, just find that goal scorer, that clinical finisher is going to put all these chances away. They're very, very close to being a good team. Let's see what's in the future for Leeds and for Jesse Marsch.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. For even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you over there.